Hello, Wastelanders, and welcome back to Fall of Man Radio. This time is myself, the Overseer, of course, your host. But tonight, we've got the Prophet here, and we're gonna continue the conversation about basic needs in the Wasteland. Except this time, I'm gonna let Prophet do most of the talking, because I spent about an hour and a half doing it myself. So,
Well,
let me know what you think.
Just to try to avoid like redundancy's sake, what in fact did you go over for last time? Just some of the topics that she hit. So I'll try to piggyback,
Yeah, no, I
try
understand.
to piggyback off of it.
So I guess first thing I kind of went over is, basic needs is basic needs, food, water, shelter, that kind of thing. And how in a post-op circumstance, you don't necessarily want to be going over to like the local grocery store or the Walmart because literally everybody and their brother is doing that. So you're gonna probably run into more trouble than it's worth. And as such, it's probably better that, especially if you're in a rural area, it's better to go find your food, hunt your food, gather it, that kind of thing, especially if you already know how.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got, if you're in a suburban area or you're in an urban area, you kind of want to, assuming you didn't prep ahead of time for circumstances like this, you probably want to try to get out of there and start trying to go for that same method as the rural areas where it's hunting and gathering and that kind of thing. Or you get together with your local community or your friends or something and you form a group, and then you can go and look for these things. Of course, you might, in a sense, you already have shelter, but you might not want to always be there, especially if you're in an urban or a suburban area, because you're more than likely going to get looted eventually. Someone's going to try to take your shit. So you want to get on the move eventually.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the essentials are going to revolve around your immediate environment.
Yeah.
And in some places there is a mix. I know here where we are at, we can probably travel, 20, 30 minutes, and we are actually in a more rural area than urban. I know where I'm at. I'm definitely more of an urban area than a rural area, but still, I can travel 20, 30 minutes and be pretty isolated. Even I know we reference Balahack a lot, but even Balahack in that environment, you do have neighbors, but they could be, maybe a mile down the road. Take you about 40 minutes to get to the store, maybe 20 minutes to get to a gas station. A lot of the essentials are definitely going to be environment based. But for urban areas, well, scratch that. The essentials are going to be changed, depending on the environment, of course. However, the overarching sort of essential, to life is going to be the same regardless. Of course, you're going to, like you said, you're going to need your food, water, and your shelter. The question then becomes, how do we acquire these things in that environment?
Yes, I did cover.
Things, yeah.
So I did cover a lot of the if you're living in the outdoors type of thing, where you're gonna go. I referenced the Omega events and going and finding and collecting water, filtering the water, cleaning it, that kind of thing. But I didn't really get into how, if you were to have to be in an urban area or suburban area, what kind of things would you do and still stay safe doing it, to like get those basic needs.
So did you go over that in depth, or did you just kind of scratch over it?
I was saying I didn't go over that. I went over the more out in the wilderness type. That thing.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll piggyback off of you, and I'll attack part of the urban stuff, because I made lists for both. I'm sure with the rural stuff you did, like farm, livestock, energy.
Well,
In
energy
anything
I
like
did
crops
mostly. I didn't
growing.
really go into the farming and livestock stuff.
Okay.
Um, I kind
Yeah.
of, but I did definitely go into energy, like kind of like be aware of what's going on with
Hmm.
energy in terms of if anything's being maintained, what all is
Yeah.
dangerous if it's not being maintained, and what can you do to create it yourself, that kind of thing. Like have
Right.
solar power banks for devices, build a mill, water or wind, like go back to old school
Oh
medieval,
yeah.
kind
Absolutely.
of stuff if you have to. You're at that point you're going to want to have people with you. You're going to want to have a community. So I kind of went into that and just steer clear of nuclear power plants and hydroelectric dams so long as they're not being maintained, because eventually there's going to be a disaster.
Absolutely. Well, I'll scratch over some of the more urban stuff.
Yeah.
So, like I said, where we are at, it tends to be a little bit more urban.
Hmm.
The farmland and kind of more or less swampy areas that can turn
Yeah.
into grass fields and more livable areas. That's also scattered around here. But in the urban areas, one thing as far as the essentials are concerned, you're going to be getting a lot of those essential items. Number one, primarily with what you already have,
Hmm.
right? So when we start talking about essentials, we get an emergency situation. We like to like take an inventory almost of exactly what we have.
Oh yes.
Um, and so if that with this whole recent crisis thing, it was toilet paper,
Yeah.
food,
I
and
did
so
actually
sort of like
mention
disinfecting stuff.
Yeah, I did mention how people have interesting priorities in terms of the stuff they
Absolutely.
go after, and that if
Absolutely.
you do have to go to the grocery store or whatever, wait for a little while before you
Oh
go,
yeah. Oh, I
and
was definitely
then
going to get
go
into that.
and
Yeah.
look for stuff that's gonna last you. Look
Yeah.
for
Cuz
long-term recyclable things,
yeah,
basically.
right off of the bat, and we can just throw it out for scenario base. We'll go
Hmm.
short term and then long term for both urban and rural areas. Um Although ultimately I think people who are in urban areas would want to relocate, but we can go
Yeah.
short term, long term. So for the urban areas, your short term, you know, a lot of it, people are going to get the idea. If you've ever been through like a hurricane scenario, you'll see the stores will be stocked up on things,
Yep.
and then the next day nothing will be there
Nothing. Yeah.
because everyone wants to go to the store and secure their items for their family, the items that they think they need, like batteries, medical supply, especially water
Yes.
and food. And your needs are going to change, are going to vary depending on the things that you prioritize. Of course, if you have a family, children, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever have you, your priorities are going to change. They're going to
Oh,
vary. Now, even pets, right? People, a lot of the times people prioritize their pets. They have either cats or dogs, and I think we can probably get into the topic of animals a different day. However, it does tie
hmm.
into the priorities of what someone would probably go to the store to get. But when we talk about the scenario first happening short term, the crap hit the fan scenario just happened, just occurred, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be an initial first wave. That
Oh, totally.
first wave of people are, these are the people who either have not prepared or got caught with their pants down, sort of deal, never thought something like this was going to happen. They don't know what to do. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Well, they're gonna start running to all the stores. They're gonna start running. Once the stores run out, your place is kind of like Wally World and uh, uh, I can I can say different brands on here, right?
Yeah.
like different store names, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So like your stores like
We can
Walmart,
talk
Food
about like
Lion, Farm
stores and
Fresh.
stuff without risk of any trouble, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I just wanted to make
Yeah, like
sure. Um,
I specifically mentioned Walmart and stuff like that. So
yeah, and of course
they're
all the
household
local
names,
mom and
so
pop shop. Yeah, all the local mom and pop stores that are around your area that might not be a chain, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a chain for that particular part. After they hit the big names like Walmart, Food Lion, Farm Fresh, they might have a Kroger or something like that around the
Yeah.
area. Once all of those stores are mainly hit by the first wave, that is normally, we'll see that within the first 48 to 72 hours. Definitely
Yep.
within the first 24, but within the first 48 to 72 hours, that is when the stores will be hit the most, and your essentials are going to
Mm-hmm.
die down because all the undesirable things that are left in the store are going to be there. All the non quote unquote essential items are going to be left in the store. So it is going
Mm-hmm.
to ultimately come down to, number one, what do you have prepared, and number two, uh,
And this
where
is
would you
also
find the
under the
available?
assumption that these things are not going to be restocked.
Right, right. Under that assumption that things won't be restocked, I'll go and I'll take a little saying from Glenn from The Walking Dead in the series. This isn't a spoiler. There's nothing left in the world that isn't hidden, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that you would probably find stocked on shelves, they're going to be in hidden places. We talked about going
Oh yeah.
directly to the distributors themselves before, and setting up in a distributor place, distributor,
Distribution centers and stuff.
yeah, distribution centers, and
Warehouses,
mhm,
factories, that kind of
and
thing.
going straight there. And,
Yeah.
and normally the public wouldn't think to do that because they're used to going to these stores
Mm-hmm.
and having all the needs and the wants fulfilled all in one place.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so when it comes to after that first 72 hours, I'll put that as kind of a safeguard. So after that first 72 hours, if you manage to make it through and you're still here, you're still good to go. uh, there Give me one sec. Okay,
Yep.
good to go. Um, there's going to be a little bit of an ebb, right? There's going to be a little bit of a lower end, like things are going to start going into limbo sort of deal. There might still be some people running around trying to get some things, but it's not going to be as much because the items that the first wave has secured, they're going to go back to wherever they think that their strong point is, and they're going to live off of those items until they can no longer do that. So
Mm-hmm.
within the first 48 to 72 hours, if you have items that are prepared already, and we can't stress enough how important it is to be prepared for these scenarios,
Oh yes.
um, is to go out there and see what else is left. A lot of people won't think to go to either a gas station or outside of their town to go to some places, right? Like some random gas station, some random person's mom and pop shop. These places might actually still have resources that are available after that 72-hour mark,
Well, I do
after
think
that
gas
after that first
stations would
wave.
definitely get get
Well,
searched.
gas stations within that area, right? So if we're talking
Okay.
city base, we can go like somewhere like Richmond or Williamsburg over
Yeah.
here in our area. Um, like if you're in Richmond or Williamsburg, well, the people in Williamsburg might not try to think to like, oh, let me go to the gas station located somewhere in Gloucester somewhere. So these
Mm-hmm.
places, although they might have been picked over, there's a strong chance that they might have been picked over. You're going to have a better chance of going to these kind of remote areas where people
Okay.
normally don't go to find
Yeah,
resources
that's true.
to secure that stuff.
Like the middle of the
And
middle of nowhere gas
right.
stations and stuff.
Like if I like give it a week, give it a week, everything will be picked clean around that area. It doesn't matter if you go to that remote area in Gloucester, it'll be picked clean.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking after the immediate first wave, 48 to 72 hours. If you were to go to these remote areas, they might still have something. That's not
Yeah.
a guarantee because it's always a gamble. At this point, you're turning into a scavenger to get your essential items.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now,
but
the I was mentioning
mhm.
in the last stream that one of the risks of going to like the grocery store and stuff like that first thing is if there are people who who are fully like either fully aware of what's going on and how long it's potentially going to last, or are simply taking advantage of the moment to cause problems, like, start shooting, basically. That's one of the reasons why I kind of suggested hold off before you go to these places, because
Absolutely.
you're gonna have crazy people who will
Oh, it's
take
gonna be,
advantage.
yeah.
Because
That is
not
the
a lot
biggest
of people
risk.
will just be panicking
Hmm.
and thinking, oh, it'll go away in a week or
Yeah.
whatever. That's not necessarily the case in
Yeah.
this scenario. So those people are going to be taken advantage of by the people that know, oh, shit's actually going down, so I'm going to be an
Yeah.
asshole.
They're going to take advantage. Yeah, they're going to take advantage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely
And you
understand.
want
That's
to
one of the
avoid those
biggest
people.
dangers. Yeah, that's one of the biggest dangers is the unknown factor,
Oh,
right? You
yes.
never know what somebody is willing to do because their priorities are not what your priorities are. For the vast majority of people, I would gather, I would venture to say that their priorities lie with themselves and their immediate loved ones.
Yes.
That might be a general blanket to throw over a majority of people. However, yeah, I mean the problem then lies with the unknown.
Yeah.
How do we work around the unpredictable nature of people,
Yeah.
right? Because we can predict that within the first 24 dash 72 hours, right? We can predict between that time, that first wave of people who have the same priorities that you do
Yeah.
are going to be running to the stores. They're going to be taking everything that they can. There's also that unpredictable factor where people will want to either capitalize on the situation and legitimately take over a particular area
Oh, yeah.
with power, with force. And that is a definite possibility. Have
And
we
when there
you know
is no state that has the
mhm,
monopoly on force, anyone can have the monopoly on
right.
force.
And yeah, and we've talked about it before of uh different I call them factions at this
Yeah.
point, but different groups of people who rise up, and it's like, okay, now we can be an opposing force or a defensive force against A, B, C, and D,
Yep.
or people of this nature, sort of deal. So you kind of get
That's
a
gonna be a whole
different group of
topic in and of
every. Oh
itself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But see, when we talk about even the slightest topic of essentials, we have to go into the unknown
Oh,
factor, and
totally.
that is
Totally.
that
We have to
is
go
has to do with the
into
groups and
group
stuff.
dynamics and
Hmm.
factions. You have to
Yeah.
go into everything.
Yeah. So even though we would like to try to walk around the big puddle of redundancy sort of
Yeah.
deal, or going back over topic and topic again, it all ties in. It's information that goes with other information, sort of deal, because it is all environment and scenario based.
Yep.
Um,
And
but
oh, another thing I
there's
did mention was
mhm,
that it's important to keep track of what you're doing. Like keep logs of what you're doing and stuff like that. Um
absolutely,
because
yeah,
like if you're moving around and you want to like indicate where to find things or what you've experienced and whatnot, it's important to
yeah,
try to keep a log of that, whether it be
yeah, and
on
and
on
that'll
your
be a
still
time saver
functioning,
too. Hmm.
phones or whatever, or on a pen and paper.
Oh, paper and pen still work,
Yep. Don't
but
burn your
yeah,
books.
it'll definitely help out when it comes to time saving as well.
Hmm.
If you acquire new members into a group, or you run across people like, oh, we're heading somewhere. It's like, well, I've already been there, checked it off this list. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It'll be a huge time saver, and it'll also create an organization, an organized list for where the resources have come from, and not only where the resources came from, but how, what is the amount of resources that you could gather,
Yeah.
the amount of water, the amount of food, the amount of whatever. But these essential items also, besides the stores, because the stores are just one thing. The stores are one thing. Now we
Hmm.
also have neighbors. people that you might know as acquaintances, or
Yep.
you might actually have a pretty good
And there's
relationship
the
with.
unknown
Uh,
factor to that, because while
mhm.
they could turn out to come, like, to be your friend, and like we all come together and form a little community and survive, basically. I think you mentioned in a previous stream the domestics, how there was like an area that did that, basically, like the neighborhood got together.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. But there's also the
There
chance
was.
that everyone's just gonna turn on each other to survive.
Yeah,
So.
there's and that goes in definitely with more the group dynamic
Hmm.
section of it, and how is your relationship and your rapport within your immediate neighborhood, and ultimately your surrounding community, that don't, the people who don't live directly on your street.
Yeah.
Now, with the essential items put into play, there will be some people who either had already had a plan, or they want to panic and they want to leave their immediate area
Yep.
to go somewhere else and stay there for the long haul. People will go travel. Oh, I want to go make sure my parents are okay. I'm going to stay with
Yep.
them, or I'm going to do this. I'm going to
Or
do
they're
that.
gonna
If
take
we're
their
talking,
parents somewhere or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if we're talking complete, grid down scenario, no rule of law, no nothing, that scenario, shit hit the fan, just happened.
Yep.
Well, not only keep track of the stores, but you can keep track of who is where, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your neighborhood, if you know, okay, this red car used to be here parked in this house, in front of this house. It's the only car that I've seen. Now that car has been gone for that 24 72 hour mark. And if after that first wave you don't see, okay, well, I'm marked down, okay, this house should be empty,
Yeah.
right? You can start gathering resources not only from the stores, but what people have inside of their homes as well. Now, I'm nowhere, I want to make this clear, nowhere saying that breaking and entering is an option. Home invasion. No, nothing like
No.
that. Because
No,
this
I
in this
understand.
scenario, we're talking strictly, the shit has hit the fan. People are running, rampant in the streets, whatever have you.
Yeah,
Throw any
looting,
scenario
rioting
out there.
everywhere.
Yeah, we're talking about a strict abandoned house that might have resources in it, right?
Yeah.
So those resources and essentials that you could need, and this is strictly within an urban area. Now, with rural areas, you can still do the same thing. However, you might not need to do that right off the
No.
bat, depending on what you have.
And generally
Um,
speaking, the rural areas, even though there's longer distances between neighbors, they tend to have like a positive relationship with each other, and they tend to
right.
work with each other in
Yeah.
some capacity anyway, so you probably
Yeah.
won't need to, simply because of that. And
Yeah.
there's a
And
lot more
and
self-sufficiency aspects to it, like the growing
there's a
your own
lot
food
more.
and
Yep.
hunting and all that stuff.
A
And
lot more
wells.
self-sufficiency for sure. And I know what you're talking about, the relationship between like farmers, and more uh areas that could, like rural areas sort of deal. Even
Yeah.
though your neighbors are few and far between, that could be a town where everyone like
Knows
knows your
each
name,
other.
sort of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone
first
knows
name
you.
basis.
Yep.
And with a rural area, the not only the environment changes, but your immediate situation will change. But with the urban areas, there is an essential that is not an essential right off the bat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think, right, if you think that I can stay in my house and I will ride this thing out for however long this will last. There's an undetermined number. It could be a couple of months, it could be a couple of years.
Yep.
If you think riding it out in a house is a viable option, I can't knock you for that. I don't think it's the wisest thing in the world, but you know, eventually you're going to need to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And transportation does turn into one of those things, and of course, transportation bleeds into energy.
Yep.
So your essentials are also going to change, depending on what time it is. Not talking about the time of day. I'm talking how long has it been.
Oh yeah.
Because if we're talking the short term, that 24-hour to 72-hour, maybe a week or two has
I did
passed, you
mention
know.
that when you do go and look for food at like the grocery stores and stuff, you want to know
Mhm,
how uh well, you want to know if it's still good because
mhm.
a lot of those places will have shut down. So if you've ever been at a grocery store, with all the meat and all the vegetables are kept in a cold, temperature controlled area, well, if everything's shut down, that ain't happening anymore. So all that meat's
Yeah.
gonna get rancid, and all the vegetables are gonna like
Oh
rot.
yeah. I don't
You
I
know,
don't think you're gonna have much luck in the produce
no,
aisle when it comes to
like you're
grid
gonna be
down
looking at
stuff, unless
canned goods
you're,
and
yeah.
stuff,
Like you know,
and
your
like
produce aisle is now going to be in the woods somewhere with a, you
yeah,
know, a fresh deer running around. That's your produce aisle
yeah,
there. Um that's your meat and vegetable aisle right there.
yep,
But with the certain resources inside of the stores, of course, we have all the canned goods.
yep.
Um,
Water, if
yeah,
there's any
water things
left.
might be jarred. And of course, you know,
Alcohol,
we're talking
which
about the
has other
essentials, but
purposes besides drinking.
absolutely disinfectant. You
Yep.
know,
And a
whole
lot of
nine.
people won't
Uh,
realize that.
no, they
Like
won't.
the
And
ABC
see, even
stores,
though, yeah,
if you're
even
in.
though it might not be considered an immediate essential item,
Hmm.
the tools that you could gather
Oh, yes.
could mean the difference, you know. And in that case, they do become an immediate essential item,
Hmm.
uh, such as transportation or different tools that you might need,
Like
to
literal
either, yeah,
tools,
yeah,
even.
literal tools. You know, go into the hardware store
Yep.
buying, you know, A through Z sort of deal. Um, you know, and a lot of people might have that sitting around in the home too. So, like I said, you scouted out a place. You know, like I'm not encouraging. This is We are in a civilized society now for the most part. For the most part. And
This is
breaking and
all
entering, home invasions,
scenario
yeah,
based.
it's all scenario based. We are not encouraging this whatsoever in now
Disavow.
hours nowadays. Yeah. So in this scenario though, if you were to go house to house in your neighborhood, um, and you know, there's still an unknown risk. There might be people still living there. It might have been, you know, looted already or
Hmm.
scavenged already.
There are things people
Uh,
that miss, or that
yeah,
people
people miss
miss.
things all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, but that is still a way to gather your resources, to gather your essential items that you would need to survive a little bit longer in that urban area.
Yep.
Now it's a and if you've ever tried to do it, if you ever had to do it, it is one of the hardest things to do, is to pick up everything that you own
And
and
get
move
move.
in
Yeah.
the, you
Get
know,
out.
the little tiny car that you have, you know, even in a truck you can't get everything.
No,
And
you have to
if you're
abandon.
only going to take, yep, and if you're only going to take what you got in your vehicle, on your person, this or that, if you're only going to take what you got, things are going to be left behind,
Yep.
you know. Obviously you're not going to be taking your workbench in the back of your truck when you
No.
got, you know, gallons and gallons of water that you could bring instead.
Yeah.
um
You're not gonna
that's just
take
not going to
your
happen.
like I say, keep your books and stuff like that, but you're probably not gonna take your books. You're not gonna
Yeah.
take your computer. You're not gonna take, furniture, stuff like that. Um, you're not gonna take your
Yeah.
Xbox or whatever the hell.
And
Most of that shit won't
this is
even
gonna sound
work.
shitty.
So,
Yeah, right. This is gonna sound shitty, but there are also food drive places
yep,
for people who do not have means of, you know, securing items themselves in day-to-day life, uh,
already.
before, yeah, already, you know, not including the apocalypse. So
Mm-hmm.
these places might not be on the
Food
first
banks.
list of yeah, food banks.
I mean,
These
I've
places
been
are
to a
not
food
going to
bank.
be,
They're
yeah,
huge.
hmm, yeah.
There's a lot of
A lot of
stuff
these
in there.
places, a lot of these places are not going to be, you know, priority number one in that first wave scenario. So
Mm-hmm.
going along with that first wave, we can go ahead and put down food banks there too, because when you got big chains like Walmart and Food Lion, Farm Fresh, Kroger, whatever
And
have you, Whole
from
Foods,
what I
wherever
know
you
about
shop at, you
food
know.
banks is that the
Hmm.
food in there isn't necessarily bad. It's just stuff that the retail stores don't sell
Yeah,
because of like slight defects, or like
yeah.
the box got damaged a little bit, but it's still perfectly edible and
Hmm.
perfectly fine.
Oh yeah,
Um, or it's donated stuff, obviously.
yeah.
That
There
is a
there's
lot
similar
of it.
stores. There's similar stores like that that actually make their items that they sell are
Yeah.
items that would not sell in bigger chain stores. Like I know Big Lots, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Big Lots, I don't know if that's, I know it's a chain place. I don't know if it's around the entirety of the United States sort of deal. But I know Big
I
Lots,
think it's
they
a
do,
East Coast
uh,
at
yeah, it
least.
probably might be more East Coast. But I know Big Lots, they take the items, that won't sell in stores like Walmart, and they actually stock them on their shelves,
Yeah.
and they put them at a lower price, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's kind of
even
like
even places
how,
like Big Lots will be picked over, but
so while produce would eventually go bad, you do have um like one of the weird things about about like society prior to something like this happening is the way that people are really picky about what their food looks like. And they're like, especially vegetables and stuff like that, there are perfectly edible, perfectly good vegetables that just look weird that people will
yeah,
not eat. And so because people won't eat them because of that perception they have
yeah.
of them, a lot of
Oh
places
yeah.
won't sell them.
And that brings me to a good point. If you are an avid prepper, or you're thinking of getting into it, or you're just kind of talking about topics like this, kind of like we're
Yeah.
doing, just kind of thinking about it. Well, uh, you're not going to want to get food you're not going to eat, in your
Mm-hmm.
regular diet. I'm not talking, oh my goodness, I'm not going to eat any, you know, any vegetables or any beans or anything like that. So I'm just gonna stock up on pizza because that's just what I like to eat. Well, I'm not gonna immediately judge you for doing that. It's pretty cool. You can be the
You want
pizza
a
guy
healthy
during the
diet. You want a
apocalypse.
balanced
You know,
diet.
right? But when it comes to, I know particularly prepping. When it comes to prepping, you have a choice in what to buy for food when you store it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you normally don't, if you're not a big fan of like Italian cuisine or whatever, you don't like the pastas or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever have you, like food items that you normally would not eat on a day-to-day basis. Well, you're not really going to want to eat it during a grid down scenario anyway.
No.
Even then, people are still picky. You're definitely going to be less picky in this, grid down scenario,
Oh,
but
yes.
get food that you would want to eat. Stock up on your essential items that you like eating that has a pretty decent nutritional value to it.
Yes.
Um,
Oh,
you can
speaking
never
of,
you can never go
so
wrong with water, but
yeah, well, you need water to live.
yeah.
You can live longer without eating food than you can with water. I don't remember off the
Hmm.
top of my head what the amount of days you can get by with, but
I heard it's the rule of threes, if
yeah,
I'm not mistaken. It's like 3 days without water. Three. I'm gonna
like
butcher
three
it. I'm gonna
weeks
butcher it.
without
I'm gonna leave
food,
it. I would say 3 weeks without food and like 3 days without shelter, I think.
I guess.
But if not, I
I
completely butchered it. But I
no,
believe it
I
is the rule
understand.
of threes. Um, but yeah, that shelter. Well, if you're in an urban or rural area, we can go ahead. We can kind of say you might have a place, to lay your head at night,
Yeah.
if the grid wasn't down. So you might have a place to go back to. Now, if that place has been compromised, then we have an entirely different, list of things to consider when it comes to your essentials.
Oh yes.
Um, because your essentials are still going to be right off the bat. Well, you don't have a place to store water anymore.
Yep.
You don't have a place to store food anymore. And a big
Salt
thing that
your
is going
meat.
to Yeah, a big thing that's going to get in your way is you don't have a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have a shelter, you don't have a place to store anything.
Yep.
Uh, so shelter is going to be a big thing if your immediate, home front becomes compromised. Uh, so when it comes to shelter, I mean, we have everything from tents to tarps to whatever if you're on the
Yeah. And
road
I did definitely talk about
to
that.
yeah, to
I
places
mentioned
that
how
might
we
not be. Yeah.
did things at Omega and
Oh yeah.
how some guys didn't. Some depending on the weather and stuff, you got people that are just be in a hammock or
Hmm.
just literally on the ground in their sleeping bag, or in the case of hijack
Right.
or merchant slash lost and found. I did tell that story too. Um, how they used like tarps. Um, and then of course I talked about how I have a single person like mountain climbing tent and stuff like that. But you can have tents for multiple people, but ideally cut down on weight, cut down on amount of, potential people, generally speaking, you're gonna have
Right.
to deal with. Don't bring that. Take care of yourself. Prioritize yourself before you try to help other people out. Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Like
Um.
in terms of like camping out and stuff, you kind of want to just have your own little space if you can.
Who? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I had to do something. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Absolutely. Even though, even though you might be within a group, you still definitely want to have your space.
Yeah.
Um. I know I'm a big advocate for like yeah even though I'm a more of a social person, I like to have my downtime. I like to have my little space where I can go and do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just wind down for a little bit, and that is a big thing, especially when it comes to group dynamics. But uh, one
Gotta
thing
get away
when
from
it
each other
comes,
sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. But I don't want to. We can, I guess, kind of shift back to essential
Yeah.
from urban, and I'll go into rural, and because I got some good things that can go for both urban and rural
Okay.
areas. But one thing that we can consider is with the tools that you might have collected or things that you might already have, whether you be in an urban or more rural setting, is
Mm-hmm.
your tools, like your ingenuity. What can you do? Are you handy? Because if so, you can create things to collect,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like water. If it starts to, you have a torrential downpour one day, oh man, it
Yep.
sucks. I can't go out and scavenge. Well,
Well, you can
hopefully you have
collect that
something that can
water.
collect it. Yeah, something that can collect it like a
Yeah,
tarp.
I once again
Um,
I did talk about that a little bit in the context of Omega and how we find a water source or we use
oh yeah.
rainwater and we collect it
Yeah,
and we
I
filter it and
tried to
everything.
I tried to collect it, and I wanted to make the best out of a bad situation. And at that Omega, we're all sleeping either in personal tents or some people like to put up hammocks. But I know that
Yeah,
the main majority of people who were camping with us at that Omega event in Perdition, we were all in tents.
yeah,
Um, and the water then becomes a problem because you have tents that are like waterproof, sealed, yada yada yada,
yeah,
and then you also have ones that aren't so waterproof. They don't have a rain fly, or they don't have you know you didn't put the material on that could seal all of the sewing
yeah.
what are they called? The-
The seams.
yeah, the seams. Sorry, I
Yeah.
went complete brain fart
No,
there
I
for a second.
understand.
The seams on the tent. You didn't seal the seams on the tent. The water then becomes a problem. However,
Hmm.
I tried to make a rain catch with an extra tarp that we had and a couple of sticks. Well,
Oh yeah, I
I'm
remember the.
I'm I was success. I filled up a gallon jug about to the halfway point.
Yeah.
That is about as successful as I got with that rain catch. Now, it was a very shitty rain catch. It was probably the worst, like the worst shitty rain catch that I could make. If I were to, be a little bit more serious with it, then you can collect, get something that's more foolproof instead of collecting, half a gallon for a group of 20 people. You're going to be dead within a day.
Yeah.
Uh, you can start to expand more. I don't know if you've talked about our tent city before, but we've made tent cities, where
Oh,
we would
no, I did not,
and
but I thought about it. Especially
and this
Thunderdome.
one and this one more goes along with Revelations over there at Balahak.
Yep.
Um we did create a tent city at the Circus of Value, and we would have to, at times, it would seem, dump or poke holes in the bottom of the tarps
Yep.
for gallons and gallons of water.
Oh yeah.
Like, so much water would be collected. I mean, by the time the rain stopped and we could, we didn't
And
have
there's a
to empty
pond
out the
right next
tarps
to us, so
anymore.
we had water
There's
no matter
yeah,
what.
you're standing basically in the pond, and the pond's located 20-30 foot to the left of you.
Yeah.
But there's water all over the place. I mean, if water ever became a problem, it would be, at that point, someone did something wrong. You didn't put up your rain collector, because
Yeah.
there was so much water out there. And that is one thing that you can do from not only a rural standpoint, but an urban place as well. Now,
Oh yeah.
I'll shift a little bit over to the rural area now when we're talking about essential stuff. Now, depending on where you're at, like I said, environment and scenario based, depending on where you're at,
Yeah.
you could have running water, like a stream. And that's also the same thing for the urban area
Yeah.
too. You might be next to a stream in an urban area.
So I did
Um,
mention lakes and streams and ponds, and
cool.
I mentioned groundwater. So if you wanna
Yeah,
have a well,
wells.
you gotta
Yeah,
find the groundwater first of all. You have to make sure you're not getting contaminated water.
yeah,
And if it is, you have to figure out a way to properly filter and
yeah.
disinfect that.
I don't know if you talked about the different there
And
is a
then,
difference between water purification and water filtration.
yeah, I kinda like I didn't specifically talk about the difference. I just kind of
Yeah.
mentioned that you have to do those
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So, if you wanted to talk about the specifics of that, though.
Well, you know, uh, well, see, okay. With purification, you do have to have particular items.
Hmm.
Now, with filtration, you can do a couple of different things when it comes to filtration. Now, I've heard people actually make filters out of uh, dirt. You can have a little sifting thing or whatever
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that can hold dirt in, but it will not hold water. And you pour your water into said, filter, and you can filter out all the shit that's inside of that water. Now,
Yep.
how foolproof it is, I know there's some more stuff added to it. How foolproof it is, not 100% sure, but that is an option for water filtration, especially if you're getting it from a questionable source.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'd have to do some. I know I talked to the guy from preparedness or get prepared, whatever, because
Oh,
I'm,
okay.
like I said, I'm not some survival guru.
No,
We're
nor
kind of
am
just
I.
talking about very, very basic things
Yeah.
as far as the essentials, but there is a distinct difference between filtration and purification.
Yeah, I
I
think
know
we got
purification,
purification tablets
yeah,
for the events.
yeah, we got purification tablets, but there's also, you can use the same thing. It's not the same material, it's not the same resource, obviously, but it does the same trick.
Hmm.
Is bleach. You can actually bleach your water,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I see. It's slipping my mind. I used to know the exact amount of bleach to add per gallon of water, and now it's just slipping my mind. Like, I've
oh,
never even heard the thing. But there's a particular amount of bleach that
I've
you would
heard of
add
it, but
to
I
water.
didn't mention it, and I don't remember
Yeah.
how much either. I did mention
Um.
boiling, though.
Yeah, you can also boil water too. That used to be done back in the day.
Yep.
Uh, boiling water to
Back to
essentially get all the
basics,
shit out of
literally.
it. Absolutely. And that also goes into one of your essentials or shelter too, is if you can create a fire.
Yep. Yeah, I did talk about that. I talked about various types of getting fire
Mhm.
started. I didn't mention it earlier when I was talking just myself, but so funnily enough, I learned this from an anime that's all
Oh
about
boy.
camping. It's literally just about camping. And apparently you can use pine cones to help start a fire. Like they're a good fire starter just by themselves. And
Yeah, I
you
mean, I haven't heard directly of just using pine cones. That's interesting.
yeah, well
Yeah.
basically at least as far as the show shows, the show is called Laid Back Camp in English. Um but basically you take a pine cone and you set it at the bottom as your like main kindling, I guess. And then you put shaved off wood, like you shave off the bark from the wood and you make sticks basically, and you lay it around the pine cones. And then you have an opening so that you can get to the pine cones, and then you light the pine cones, and then it'll catch, and then it'll spread out onto the sticks.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
didn't
want
know
to
that.
try it sometime because I never thought to try it until recently. Because they just came out with like another season for the show, and I was reminded because they showed it again. There was another way they showed you could do something similar without needing the pine cone, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Um, but then, of course, flint and steel or scratching, literally rubbing two sticks together, rubbing a rock up against the stick, that kind of thing, getting the spark going. Basic stuff was some of the stuff I talked about, and if you got a lighter and whatnot. So yeah, but
Heck yeah.
yep, but yeah, you definitely want to have a source of. You want to have a fire for not only for cooking and boiling things like water, but also for warmth, especially in this hemisphere, the
Yeah,
winter.
I can attest for being actually doing a little bit more of the bushcraft type of camping ventures that I've been on.
hmm
Uh, getting the fire started is one of the highest morale points, right?
Oh yeah.
You just come to a place and you're trying to get everything settled, trying to find some good ground to either place your improvised shelter, or somebody might have a tarp or something like that,
Oh
getting
yeah.
your bedding, getting good area. But once you have that fire, you start collecting firewood, you get that thing up, it is a big morale booster. Like, okay, yeah, finally we got the fire started, we can use the embers later, we don't have
Yep.
to worry about it as much, and we can cook our food, we'll be warm, we can dry our clothes, whatever the case may be. That fire is a big ticket item when it comes to especially survival, when it's off grid without a shelter sort of deal.
Oh yeah.
um and uh
And
with that,
if you can
yeah.
get to a point where you've like built a lean-to or something basically, and you can
Hmm.
make that fire an interior, kind of like Native Americans would do, um, that would also be kind of an ideal thing because you can enclose that warmth into a space so that it doesn't escape out into the world. So you can make sure that
Right.
you get as much out of that as you possibly can. But of course you gotta vent it out so you don't catch the place on fire. So you have to make sure you've
That would be
constructed
bad,
your building correctly so that,
because then
you're
you're
dead.
out of shelter.
Yeah, or you're dead.
Yeah, you're not. You're well. Yeah. Then suddenly it's not your problem anymore. So end show. End the show. No.
Click.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, suddenly it's just not your problem anymore. If you want to go out that way, it's a pretty baller move. But I don't advise it if you
I
like
wouldn't
living, if you
either.
like breathing. But yeah, it's just not your problem
Yeah,
anymore
you're
at that point.
gonna
Who
either the
cares?
fire will burn you to death or you'll die of the
Yeah.
fumes.
Someone else
So
will come
they'll
along and not only take your remaining goods that you have scattered around the camp, but now you just gave them a free fire. They
yeah.
they they are happy, you know.
just
And
just hope they're smart enough to fix the mistakes you made.
and yeah, and let's hope they're also not cannibals looking for a pretty
A
well
meal.
done meal, a well
Yeah.
done meal sitting there in the middle of the fire, because
Yeah.
that would not be good. But like I said, it's not your problem anymore, so
You're
they can do what
dead.
they want. Yeah,
Yep.
they can do what they want. Man. But yeah, well, we always talk about having the right skills and the right know-how, because without having some of the ideas already put into place, and not only putting like the ideas put in place, but practice.
Oh yeah.
um the rain collecting, the fire starting, the one thing that I'll get into is hunting as well.
Yep.
Big thing, and I know you probably touched on some of that stuff,
Yeah.
but
I mentioned
eventually,
specifically that
yeah,
like a lot of the rural areas tend to be more prone to
yeah,
doing that kind of thing. And they tend to have a better understanding of when is the proper season to go out, whether it be
right,
because of the laws and stuff, or because they just have been doing it for so long that they're like, okay, I should hunt during this time period because I want to make sure I don't kill off the entire population, kind of thing. But
yeah.
in
For
the
a lot of people, it's like
circumstances,
traditional too.
yeah, in the circumstances of survival, you're probably going to get a little bit more flexibility when it comes to that
Yeah.
stuff. Especially when you have a bunch of random strangers coming out of the cities and stuff, suddenly trying
Hmm.
to, collect on everything themselves.
Yeah. Um,
So,
yeah. So hunting. Well, that brings me to not an easy thing to talk about, but this is not out of the realm of possibility. Now,
hmm.
if you were put into this scenario, uh, it is now a predator and prey thing too, because
Oh,
you want
yes.
to hunt your food. Now,
Some of that food wants to hunt you,
the
too.
the resources could also come from home. If you do have a
Oh,
it's going to be bad. If you
yeah.
do have an animal, I'm not going to say a specific animal, but if you do
hmm.
have an animal, and it is getting burned down to the wire, well,
Just
that is a resource.
so yeah, I have heard that oftentimes the animal gets into instinct mode faster than the person does.
Right.
So it's as fucked up as it is, it might be necessary sometimes
Yeah.
to
And
end it.
yeah, it goes back to the priorities too. If it depends on what you own,
Yeah.
but
It's just like I've heard stories about specifically dogs, I guess, being confined in places for long periods of time and basically going wild. Like
mm,
survival instincts kick in, and they will like the person they once treated as their loved one basically, and in their eyes is now just food or in the way of survival or whatever. So I mean, it's
yeah,
screwed up,
sad
but like
sad
at
to
the end of
say,
the
but true.
day, these
Yeah,
are animals just as we
they
are,
are.
but they live based on instinct more than humans ever do. And when
Yeah,
they're put in
yeah.
dire circumstances, they're
We
going
are we
to
are
jump to those
extremely
instincts a lot
emotional
faster than
creatures.
humans.
Yeah. And that is a good point, is that we are extremely emotional beings, because
Oh yeah.
we have the not only the innate
We're
ability to
sentient.
communicate, which of course there's a flaw in that communication at times, but
Well, we have the
we
innate
can get attached
ability
to
to
things
use
too.
language. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but yeah, you know, along with the resources that you could have at your home, including animals,
Mm-hmm.
um, having the ability to hunt, although people might not like to justify it morally when it comes to living in a civilized society. When the grid goes down and you don't have those trucks delivering food to you anymore, like I said, the
Yep.
woods will become your meat and deli section
Oh
sort
yes.
of deal.
Use every part of the animal.
Mhm.
That's I should have
Oh
mentioned that
yeah,
before. Um, but
oh
use
yeah,
every
and
part of the animal.
one thing that goes along with hunting is also trapping. That can go
Mm-hmm.
with urban and rural areas too. You know, fishing and trapping as well.
Oh yeah.
um, and being able to identify, you know, and this doesn't go along with the
Just
with the
remember, it
hunting
ain't
or the
called
trapping,
catching.
but being able to identify uh, not only what animals are safe for you to consume, you know, how to
Plants.
cook the animal as well, but not only what animals might be safe for you to consume, but identifying what plants and what
Yep.
objects out in nature that occur, because you know, if you know nothing about nothing, then pick up a book, you know,
Yep. That's why I
go
said
to a
save the
professional.
books. I
Yeah,
I
save the
actually
books, you know,
did mention, like,
refer to a book.
don't burn the books, save the books, because some of those books is gonna have actual useful information for your survival.
Absolutely.
And if you get
and
rid
one
of
and
that,
and I
then
know there are
people aren't
tons
gonna
of books
remember
out
that.
there, tons of books out there that revolve around wildlife,
Yep.
plant life, you know, different things that you would come across in different
Don't
sections
eat
and
this
regions of the
mushroom,
world.
but eat this
Hmm.
mushroom. You know, that kind
Right,
of thing.
right. This one will make you think that you're, you know, traveling through hyperspace. This other one, you know, will actually give you nutritional value,
Yeah.
and this one will kill you.
Yeah.
You know, there's a wide variety of plant life out there that will do some crazy things to you, and it's
Oh yeah.
always helpful to know and be able to identify the differences between these and what's edible, what's good for you, what's
Oh
the
yeah.
nutritional value behind it, and eventually, if you do get good, or if you already have some knowledge or you get good at identifying, you can find some medicinal value in some of these medicine or some of these plants. They can be
Oh
used
yeah.
as medicine and antibiotics in a lot of
Aloe
cases.
vera.
um, Yep, absolutely. Um, they can be used as medicinal purposes as well, and that might become a part of your essentials. And that, with the whole plant thing, I did want to tie that into the crops and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
before I go into that, see, with the urban areas, you're not going to have that great of an opportunity to do that,
No.
to find the that sort of wildlife, because a lot of wildlife, they don't like human activity.
No.
They don't like human
They're
activity.
not gonna
You
be
know,
coming into those areas until long after
yeah,
people are gone.
yeah. Now,
And nature
granted, there
starts to
there are
retake the
species, there
place.
are yeah, and until that place is kind of vacated when it comes to human life.
Yeah.
But there are some, there are a lot of species that have, you know, although they run at the sight of a human if you get too close, they've become accustomed to living in a human world sort of
Yeah.
deal, the concrete jungle sort of. They've
Birds.
become accustomed to that. Birds, squirrels, rabbit,
Yep.
fox, raccoons, deer.
Coyotes.
You know, yeah,
Sometimes.
certain animals have become accustomed to human life. Uh, although they're a little, you know, don't get close to me sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
They're more inclined to be around these areas, if they're used to seeing this environment sort of deal. It's kind of with anything really.
Yeah.
But eventually you want to get out of these urban areas, because you won't find the resources that you could find out there in more isolated areas when it comes to, you know,
And it tends to be more
like the woods
dangerous.
or Yeah, it can definitely be more dangerous. It's not, unless there is, because there's a function for everyone in society.
Yeah.
I don't like when people put down particular occupations or jobs because it doesn't do A, B, C, or D, it doesn't pay this amount or whatever. No, if one key, people, like, let's just say, the sanitation department for
Yep.
your local, your city or your state
Suddenly stops showing up.
decides to stop showing up. Well, not only have you created a hazardous problem, but all the waste is not going anywhere,
Yep.
right? And
And
that's a big
we've
thing for
we've talked
survival as
about
well.
waste
uh,
collectors before.
oh yes,
The trash collector.
oh my goodness, that was a fun topic. Yeah, if you're
I
if
know.
you're ever if you're ever walking around Revelations as a trash man, my hat's off to you there, brother. but but yeah, these are essential. This is an essential part of living in a society,
Oh yeah.
because if in a more uh,
The dirty jobs are
urbanized century.
oftentimes some of the most important jobs.
Absolutely, because if you take these people away, it takes people to run a city. You take
Oh yeah.
that part of the uh, you take that part of the machine away, it's not going to run properly.
Nope.
You know, and uh, when it comes to rural areas, it still takes functioning pieces to make it a livable situation for humans. However, when it comes to the resources that you could find, they might be more plentiful. You just have to know how to utilize them. You have to
Oh yeah.
know how to grow the plants. You have to know how, what crops will grow at a uh,
So
particular altitude, particular
yeah,
temperature,
there
particular time
is
of year. You know.
I in the past there was a friend of mine um who was he was interested in permaculture,
Mm,
which is as far as I'm aware, it's basically growing specific types of like plants and stuff, edible plants that can kind of grow in near any environment, and you can grow them inside your house if you just get, the right lighting and everything. You can grow them in the backyard, you can grow them wherever, and they generally like maintain integrity all year round. Um,
wow.
or at the very least in generally easily controllable temperatures. But I'm not absolutely certain about this stuff because I've only he never really gotten into details of it. He mostly just talked about
Right.
how he's like, I'm interested in permaculture, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what that really is though. So,
Yeah.
but that is something, nonetheless, because I think that's generally what it is that it's stuff that you can kind of grow generally in any environment, and um, as a result, that's why it's perma in sense of permanent. Um,
That's very interesting, actually.
yeah. In fact, I will use this opportunity to look it up real quick.
Yeah. While you're looking that up, I will touch back on some of the rural stuff. So, like I said,
Hmm.
depending on the environment, you might have livestock, you might not. If you do have livestock, you could capitalize on what you're already doing and start, getting into the animal breeding sort of deals to have a sustained uh, sustained food source from
Oh yeah.
that point. Um, and you know I'm no expert when it comes to farming. I've never really been on a farm before. um, However, I am interested in my urban scenario. I understand that I would eventually have to move to a more sustainable environment,
Yeah.
and something that could easily be utilized is the crops, the animal life and whatnot from a rural environment, which in my opinion could definitely be more sustainable. Because like I said, without the people inside of the city to make that city function, we don't have the lights at night anymore. We don't
No.
have people collecting things anymore. We don't have people delivering food anymore. All that stuff goes down. So a more sustainable environment would be something that is plentiful in resources. The problem becomes, how do you utilize these resources?
Mm-hmm.
uh, but all of that ties into your essential needs, because eventually, in that urban environment, you might not have a solid food source. You could be living off of your cans of beans, and if your beans run out, oh god, what happens then? You don't
Yep.
know how to hunt, you don't know how to grow things, you don't know how to utilize what could potentially be out there. And not to mention, if you don't know how to, if you don't have these skills of growing things or hunting, and actually having that as a form of food, then you're already in a compromised environment, because you don't have plentiful animals running around. You don't have plant life growing. So in a more rural area, you would.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the end goal, even though I said it was more or less my personal thing, it could be used as a blanket statement. Eventually, you want to move to a more sustainable environment. In my belief, I don't think that an urban area, unless you have the correct amount of people with a good set of skills, that
Yeah.
you'd be able to live very long in an urban environment without having some potential hazard to your life. Running out of the water sources, running out of food sources. The maintenance of a building, even
Oh yeah.
getting right down to it. So
And you have to assume that everyone trusts each other enough to do all this
yeah, yeah,
in
and
these
that'll yeah.
circumstances, no less.
And that'll eventually bring us to a topic that I know that me and the overseer want to talk about for a while, is group dynamic.
Yep.
Which we won't reach into that tonight, as we're talking about more or less the essentials of the waste.
Yeah.
But
I
group dynamic
did.
is going to be something big.
Oh yes. Oh totally. That's gonna be fun. Um, but I did find, so I just popped it on Wikipedia. The permaculture stuff. So it's an approach to land management that adopts arrangements observed in flourishing natural ecosystems. Design principles derived from using whole systems thinking. It uses the principles in fields such as regenerative agriculture, rewilding, and community resilience.
Wow,
So,
that's actually pretty cool.
yeah, and the history. 1978 is coined by Bill Mollison at the environmental psychology lecturer in environmental psychology at University of Tasmania, and graduate student David Holmgren. Okay. Father permaculture. The ethics on which permaculture builds are care of the earth, provision of all life systems to continue and multiply, care of people, provision for people to access those resources necessary for their existence, and setting limits to population and to consumption. By governing our needs, we can set resources aside to further the above principles. Pattern emphasizes patterns of landscape, function, and species assemblies.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get an idea of like the really like layman's explanation.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm really getting from it, and why I think it's interesting, is having having, I guess, plant life that can not only, I guess you said regenerate, but survive in very extreme environments.
Generally speaking, yes. It's all dependent on what you're using to raise these things. So it looks like they have a layered system. Um, so it's like you got where you are and where you're living, and then you go out into to what you're frequently using. So it says it's a kitchen garden with a microclimate. And then you go in a more cultivated food production, market crops, and greenhouse type stuff. And then you go out further and it's fruits and trees and pasture, cash crops kind of thing. Then you get into wild food gathering, pastures, wood cutting, and then you get into foraging kind of stuff. A lot of it's not necessarily like all agriculture related. Some of it is like there's a social dynamic involved. It seems. Um, like a lot of primitivists, I believe, kind of go by this system, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so it's got an anarchy
Yeah.
element to it, apparently. So, but I want to say portmanteau of permanent agriculture. Yep. So I guess it's stuff that it's setting things up in such a way that it's like you're gonna prioritize the specific things that are you're always gonna use, you're always gonna need, and that are easy to produce and easy to take care of, and then you kind of branch out from there based on how important, how easy it is to take care of, and that kind of thing. And then it eventually turns into you don't have to take care of it at all because it kind of just happens, and you can just go out there and find it. At least that's generally what my understanding is.
Well, that's what's up in here. Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm writing some stuff down.
Yep. But regenerative, regenerative, regenerative agriculture is conservation rehabilitation approach to food and farming. Focuses on topsoil regeneration, increasing biodiversity, and improving the water cycle, enhancing ecosystem services, supporting bioequestrian. What? Increasing resilience. To climate change and strengthening the health and vitality of the farm soil. So having a good amount of biodiversity, like animals and different kinds of plants that kind of work together to improve the growth rate and stuff like that, or the wellness, I guess. And rewilding is restoring a wilderness aspect to a previously uh like industrialized or whatever. So like planting trees and letting the grass grow and even says reintroducing predators, apex predators, and keystone species. And then the community resilience is ability of a community to use available resources, energy, communication, transportation, food to respond, withstand, and recover from adverse situations, economic collapse to global catastrophic risks. That's funny, because that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is. I do have to apologize. I might have to cut this one a tad bit short on my
That's
end. I
okay.
know you'll probably still keep it going a little bit, but there's one last thing I wanted to touch on was
Yeah,
even though
we
there's
might
going to be a
call it
plus side
here
and a
actually,
downside.
since
Yeah.
I did a
Okay.
I did a while earlier,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and this will kind of bleed into the whole group dynamic thing we are talking about, but it still has to do with the essential stuff. So uh depending on what environment you're in, either urban or rural,
mm-hmm.
it could be a plus side or downside. Because like we said, the undetermined factor is going to be the people. However, if you get to a more rural environment, you're going to be isolated. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be in an urban environment, you increase the chances of coming in contact with somebody. That could be a plus side or downside depending on the nature of the person.
Oh
Which,
yes.
which I mean, you know, with that, I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that because that was just my last little bullet point that I had for both urban and rural. But I think we did kind of cover everything as far as um, the livestock, the crops, energy, resources, running waters,
Yeah.
transportation, stores, improv, engineering, all the kind of basic stuff. So even though we do get off track here a lot of the times, the main goal is to talk about the essential stuff, but the things that kind of branch off in order for you to maintain your resources, maintain your essential items.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
like
I
I said,
did. So,
overlaying, you know.
yeah. So I think probably next time,
Yeah.
if we don't go into more detail about, say, energy or something, we'll probably start looking into the group dynamic stuff finally. Um, and that might kind of be one of the last prepper-ish topics that we talk about, because I kind of want to branch into talking about um, the Wasteland genre in media. So talking about like movies and games and stuff like that, and like comparing the different types of wastelands that are predicted or depicted in these things to each other, and just discussing
Oh,
like
absolutely.
how, and maybe, I mean, to an extent we could talk about how realistic it is and what kind of things, you know, they do
Yeah.
that would be likely in real life versus what's not likely, that kind of thing. And then after a while, I eventually, the ultimate plan, and I did say this in the previous stream, but I might as well go over it again with you and everyone who might be watching. Um, Eventually, the plan is to start doing like a true full-on like radio show with myself and some other guys in all our get up and face cam and everything, and we all get up into antics and make fun of each other and tell stories and do crazy things and interact with the audience and stuff like that. Like that's the
Oh yeah,
ultimate
we've talked about
goal of the show.
yeah, we talked about that stuff before.
Yeah.
About some of the goals that you're trying to take the whole channel in like direction wise.
Yep.
And I completely agree. Even though we kind of we always talk about like events, but we also talk about RAL stuff too. I would complete into RAL stuff because
Yeah.
we do talk about everything, sort of deal. Kind of
Yep.
make it full circle just to give people an idea of what we are actually getting to, like the point wise.
Yeah. Yep. But I think it's gonna eventually we're gonna be more entertainment, less education.
Absolutely.
So, but
And hell, I mean,
I'll
eventually, maybe we could come back to a topic later on if we do get more time out there,
oh
with
yeah.
either event or IRL stuff. Just go over another topic, see how our priorities might have changed depending on um, what we do.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, we'll probably reapproach some stuff. I mean, we did it even now, or even tonight. And that'll probably happen even during the entertainment related stuff. Especially if there's people in the audience or something asking about something specific. Um, so, there's that. Um, and then like there's obviously I need to get my logs out. Um, but there is some other stuff, I guess, potentially in the works when it comes to having some live action content. But that's a matter of getting with the
Ooh,
right people to make it happen.
absolutely.
So I don't have any specific dates and times and whatnot for that, but that
No, it's
would
all in the
be,
process of planning, you know.
yeah, that would
And
be
of course,
something
we
to look
know with
forward to.
our we've referenced before our immediate group and our people within it. We just gotta, discuss amongst ourselves, and hopefully we can bring it to light and
Yeah.
uh, definitely help. Not only from the overseer's perspective, but possibly get even more people involved with the whole platform. You know.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely would love to like I mean some of the guys are already have their own YouTube channels, and I've already kind of mentioned them before, linked them before and stuff like that. But like the more people we could kind of get on board, that would be cool. And even if they don't want to do that and they just want to be in the videos and stuff, that's totally fine too. Um, but I just want to get this out into the world, you know? Like
Yeah, man. Yeah,
it's a
man.
niche that, like, it's a small, relatively small niche. Um, and it seems like there's, I don't know, I just feel like I haven't seen people really approach it the same way I'm trying to. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the show, both of them. And as usual, please leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, that kind of thing. Leave a comment with your thoughts, any questions, that kind of thing. We might bring it up next time. In fact, we probably will if you leave something. Um, and well, good luck out in the wasteland, everyone. And I'll see you next time.